The alcohol industry representative, Lucky Ntimane, and the chairperson of the Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association, Sinenhlanhla Mnguni, joins us now. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So let me just start with you, Mr. Ntimane. I know some in the industry had said that they are cautiously optimistic. Is this ultimately good news for you, considering the fact that the industry has been brought to its knees?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Good evening to your viewers as well. We are more relieved than happy. I think there's no cause for celebration, as the majority of our people's livelihoods are already at stake. But we'd like to commend the president on his brave move to allow the sale of liquor. We understand that this would not have been an easy decision from his side. It required him to have confidence in the industry that will do the right thing and comply with all the COVID-19 regulations, and also ensure that we trade in alcohol responsibly. We want to say to him that we accept the responsibility that's given to us, and we're going to follow suit and make sure that we make the country proud and trade responsibly as a liquor industry.
And the call has been made on the industry to work with government in reducing the number of alcohol-related crimes and offences. And some of the suggestion has been limiting the hours, as in self-restriction, limiting the hours that you're going to sell alcohol to people, and perhaps even thinking about limiting the amount of alcohol that you sell to a person, and on certain days, as in the units per week, for instance, that you would have. Is that something that you're looking to entertain, Mr. Ntimane?
So I think after this announcement by the president, we need to at conditions detail and study those and be able to feedback to the public on what those positions are. But we remain committed to working with government, creating the social compact that will, ensure that we work together with government to fight the pandemic. The fact that alcohol is allowed to be traded again doesn't mean that all is well. Then we must elect, as the president put it. But this is almost like a call to action for everyone to come together, because the victory against the COVID-19 that's all of us. And as liquor traders, manufacturers, we take that responsibility to heart to say to government, to say to the public, continue to trade liquor responsibly, and continue to engage with government and offer them support in ensuring that all the systems are in place that will fight COVID-19, and we do our part in that.
Okay, so let's hear from the tobacco industry. Mr. Mnguni, your industry obviously very happy about this decision. It's something that you've been fighting for months as well. What opportunities do you see for rebuilding the industry, considering that a lot of the business seems to have been taken by the black market?
Definitely. Thank you for having me on your show. It's going to be a mountainous task for the industry coming back after almost 5 months of inactivity, particularly, as you correctly mentioned, given that the illicit trade has gained traction within the market. And we had pointed this out to government prior to them implementing this ban, in that it's going to create a lot of headaches for both law enforcement agencies and also the legitimate industry, because people are going to become accustomed to these cheaper, inferior goods which have no taxes levied or attached to them, because, of course, these criminal syndicates that operate within the illicit economy do not pay taxes. And it's going to be quite difficult because, of course, we know that South Africa currently is economically in a very dark place, so people will not be able to afford the cigarettes that the legitimate industry sells, in comparison to the ones that perhaps the criminal syndicates operating in the illicit economy offer at a much cheaper rate.
It's intriguing that you should say that people would probably still want to remain with these cheaper and unsafe products, because what we've seen is that many people who have found it very difficult to contend with the ban on both industries, alcohol and tobacco, have complained about the high prices. So I don't know. I think one would have thought it would be a relief to consumers, because then they could buy tobacco products now at the usual prices that they used to, not at the hugely inflated one, Mr. Mnguni.
Of course, agreed. But again, what the point I was making is that the products which are currently operating in the illicit market will be still cheaper than the ones that legitimate manufacturers will be selling, in that these criminal syndicates do not pay taxes, so they'll still be able to offer cheaper products. And now they've had the ability of sort of inverted commas marketing their brands. So it's going to be a challenge, one which we had pointed out to government, but we hope to, as industry, work together with government and law enforcement agencies in attempting to root out these criminals who are currently operating in our industry.
Mr. Ntimane, I'll come to you in just a moment, but one is curious, Mr. Mnguni, are you then still going ahead with your court action given the fact that the ban has been lifted?
Definitely, for a number of reasons. I mean, we know that the president has stated that it is not certain that we will remain under alert level 2 forever, and things can change. So one of the reasons is that, and again, also the fact that this is a matter of national interest, which is what we stated in our court papers. And further, there are many other aspects which need to be dealt with by the SCA. And if one has regard to the order which was granted this morning by the Supreme Court of Appeal, which granted us leave to appeal the ruling, there's also the aspect of costs, wherein the SCA has stated that should we not proceed with our court application, of course, we will be liable for the entire cost of the application to date. So there's a number of things that we need to consider, and we will be sitting with our legal team to discuss the way forward and as far as our appeal is concerned.
The informal sector in the liquor industry, Mr. Ntimane, has suffered quite a lot, and I'm looking at what we know as the township businesses, the shebeens, etc. And we know for a lot of families this has been a source of income. Single parent households, for instance, have been affected. What kind of support are you looking at providing?
Yes, the situation has been very dire in the township trade. As we know, 54% of liquor traders in the township space are women, and those have been the hardest hit. And it's pertinent that we're talking about this in the Women's Month, and we're hoping that government should be able to come some sort of relief package. Proposals have been made in that regard, where we ask for 3,000 off to pay to taverns, as well as look at an issue of immediate assistance with regards to grocery. So, and we're still waiting for government to come to the party with regards to those requests. We are hopeful that with the first positive step that the government has made in open up the sector, maybe they will be in a position to engage further in assisting the liquor traders, as it were.
And this is something that, Mr. Mnguni, when you mentioned earlier on about the impact on the industry and the continuing court case, should it be found that you were unfairly discriminated against, or the bias against the tobacco industry, for instance, that has led to you losing so much money that it's in your favor, would you be seeking reparations from government, for instance?
Look, that is something that we are in discussions with our legal team on. We haven't yet reached a firm sort of position on that. And it is something that, of course, as we go along, and of course, again, the Supreme Court of Appeal would first have to rule in our favor in as far as this matter is concerned. But it is something that we may have to consider at a later stage.
And how would this lifting of the ban impact on how you operate going forward? We are obviously in a time of COVID-19. Concerns have been raised generally about people's respiratory health, and we know that your product doesn't necessarily lend itself in aiding in that respect per se, especially given the arguments that government have given. Are you looking at pivoting the business in one way or the other just going forward?
Look, I mean, there's currently certain pieces of legislation which are on the table which go to further regulating the tobacco industry. And this is something that perhaps would give an opportune moment for us to engage government on how the industry is conducts its business rather going forward. So yes, definitely, I think that is something that could definitely be on the cards. Again, we do not know what the regulations state in as far as how tobacco products and cigarettes are going to be sold going forward. So again, perhaps this gives us and government an opportune moment to sit around the table and structure some sort of, or rather have some sort of discussion to how the industry operates going forward.
Mr. Ntimane, you've been, as has been the tobacco industry, in ongoing discussions with government about how to proceed. What are the discussions, or at least from your end, proposals that you've made before government to say this is how we're going to operate? So
we took the Minister of Health on Wednesday through our 4 killers that we believe underpins, almost the best scenario for creating an environment that will allow us to trade in alcohol in a responsible way. So we looked at the issue of underage drinking, we looked at drink and driving, we looked at responsible selling of alcohol, and we looked at GBV as getting tavern owners to be the champions in the fight against gender-based violence, and femicide by using their tavern real estate to be the safe zones that will be able to enact that fight. So we are comfortable that the response that we got from the minister, and subsequent to that, we've had a positive engagement with the Minister of Police, to working with him on the ground as tavern owners to ensure that the policing on the ground, is also being assisted by tavern owners. So we see our role not only as liquor traders, but also as part of the society that's committed to working with government in creating a social compact to fighting the basic issues of crime, as it were.
Mr. Mnguni, you'll obviously also have to come up with creative ways on how to rebuild your industry, imbue growth again. Anything that you would have seen happen in other countries or from just general international best practice that you're thinking of implementing?
Look, of course, we know that South Africa is probably the only country that implemented a ban on the sale of cigarettes and tobacco products. Other countries temporarily had such bans. Again, in relation to that question that you posed, there are certain challenges in that the tobacco industry is one of the most regulated industries in that, for instance, there are regulations in relation to marketing and promotion of cigarettes and other tobacco products. So I think it's just going to be a continuation of what's traditionally been done. I think it's going to be very difficult to step outside of the boundaries that are already been set by legislation which currently exists. So I don't think you're going to see anything too fancy coming from the tobacco industry going forward.
One of the things that in its plans the government is looking at in its growth strategy is it's talking about re-looking at ownership plans for the tobacco industry. The accusation has always been that it's been big corporate that has been largely behind it. What are you thinking of along those lines, re-looking at the ownership patterns?
I mean, our organization represents independent South African manufacturers. So from that point of view, we've always been pro-transformation. And I think this is, again, an opportune time for other players within our industry to relook at their organizations internally and move towards some sort of transformative agenda and ensuring that, we heed the call of the president. I, in our organization, will definitely be having those kind of discussions with our members to see where else we can improve in as far as transforming our organization and its members.
And just a final question to you, Mr. Ntimane. Part of what's been suggested has been looking at the taxation regime. Your industry, in fact, both industries have been affected a great deal by this. We know that. Going forward, what do you foresee on how to just maximizing at least growth while having to contend with this? Because I'd imagine that sin taxes are something that are likely to go up as well. So it's going to be unaffordable, out of reach for quite a few people, especially people now without jobs. They've got no income. So these would not be priority items.
Yeah, I mean, based on the positive engagements we've had with government in the past 2 months today, we believe that government will be in a best position to sit with us and we'll look at ways in which we could look at issues of excise, also taxation and pricing model that government seem to be proposing. And we feel that we should be able to reach common ground because, some of the issues that we raise with government have received positive response. So we really are not worried at this stage. Suffices to say that we're positive that we should be able to form a strong relationship with government going forward as liquor and government, and we should be able to come with a taxation regime that does not affect the liquor industry in a negative way, but continue to promote growth and investment into the economy.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, alcohol industry representative like Ntimane and FITA chairperson Sinenhlanhla Mnguni.